What if the hardest part of building with AI is not coding anymore, but figuring out what you actually mean?
That is such a weird shift because most people still assume the big hurdle is technical skill.
Exactly. In this overview, we are digging into a document called What a Month of Building Autonomous Projects Taught Me. It is a first person reflection on 3 experiments with autonomous agents. And the deeper point is bigger than the projects themselves. Building has gotten faster, more open, and a lot more dependent on judgment. And by the end, the really surprising part is not what the agents can do, it is what humans still have to do.
Nice. So this starts as a story about tools, but it ends up being a story about taste, clarity, and imagination.
The author tests this in 3 very different ways. An autonomous t-shirt store built around viral phrases, a pipeline that turns photos into 3D printed figurines, and a retail newsletter that does not just collect news, but tries to explain what the news means.
So not one narrow demo, more like commerce, physical production, and information work all in 1 month.
Right, and that matters because it shows autonomy behaves differently depending on the environment. In software, things can run pretty smoothly. Once printers, materials, or suppliers get involved, the real world starts pushing back.
And this is where it gets personal for listeners. If you think automation just glides from idea to reality, that assumption breaks fast.
The biggest mindset change comes from Andrzej Karpathy, who is famous for work in AI and computer vision, saying English is the new programming language. The author basically comes away convinced that this is real. You do not need traditional coding skills to start building these systems, and maybe even more important, you can move way faster than before.
But here is the thing nobody expects. If an agent can build almost anything you describe, what happens when your description is fuzzy?
You get a fuzzy result. The hard part moves. Think of it like ordering a custom cake from an amazing baker. If you say, make it nice, you will get a cake. Just maybe not your cake.
That lands. The better the builder on the other side, the more expensive your vagueness becomes.
Exactly. So the new skill is intent specification. The author spends less time wrestling with implementation and more time asking, what am I actually trying to make?
Okay, this next part is a bit technical, but stick with me because it is worth it. The author also learns not to use the strongest model for everything. It is more like a restaurant kitchen. You do not ask the head chef to wash lettuce and design the menu at the same time. Fast, cheap models handle routine steps. Stronger models step in when reasoning or creative judgment really matters.
So in plain English, what that means is the smartest workflow is not one giant AI brain. It is a stack of different tools doing different jobs. And debugging becomes part of that lesson too. Instead of feeling like a black box, the agent explains its approach out loud, which turns debugging into a kind of running conversation and even a quiet teaching tool.
That is such a good twist. The system is not just fixing things, it is also showing you how it thinks.
But the cleanest reality check comes from the figurines. The pipeline works until a print fails. A printer jam, a material problem, some hardware glitch.
And suddenly autonomy meets gravity.
Exactly. It is like a perfect travel planner that books every connection, then your suitcase wheel snaps at the airport. The digital plan can be flawless. Somebody still has to deal with the broken thing in front of them.
Which means unattended software is one thing. Physical production still needs human handoffs. The retail experiment has another sting too. The t-shirts did not really sell. Not because the system could not make products, but because making products is only half the business. It had no marketing engine, no demand generation, no real voice pushing the items into the world.
And that leads to something even more surprising. The newsletter project may have taught the biggest lesson of all. Retrieval is cheap. Synthesis is valuable. Getting headlines is like bringing home groceries. The real value is deciding what meal to cook, for whom, and why it matters tonight.
So the scarce thing is not information anymore, it is interpretation.
Yes, and that spills into organizations too. Faster prototypes can win leadership buy-in, hackathons get more inclusive, and more employees can contribute because the technical barrier drops so much.
Which sets up the final tour. If more people can build, what is the real advantage left?
Imagination. The author ends up saying the new scarcity is originality. Agents can produce, debug, and synthesize, but taste, final judgment, and relationships still stay human.
So we started with the usual assumption that AI mainly changes coding, and we end somewhere much bigger.
Right. The tools lower the barrier, speed up prototypes, and make real experiments possible. But they also make clarity, synthesis, and imagination more important.
And maybe that is the question to leave with. When execution gets easier for everyone, what do you choose to build that nobody else has thought of?
That is the shift. Not less human value, but a different kind of human value.
Thanks for listening to this overview.